The storm was howling that night. Waves crashed violently against the jagged Icelandic cliffs, spraying salt water high into the frozen air. The skies above the North Atlantic had turned almost black, and in the distance, the lights of an isolated fishing village flickered like dying candles. For centuries, people living along these coasts had whispered about the sea's hunger, that once it claimed something, it rarely gave it back. And on this night, the sea would take more than just the quiet. It would swallow a mystery that still haunts Iceland to this very day. This is the story of a young woman who vanished in one of the coldest, most unforgiving landscapes on Earth, and how, 3 years later, fishermen dredging the icy waters would pull up her coat, still intact, still frozen, raising more questions than it answered. Her name was Elena Morozova. She was 27 years old, originally from a small town in Eastern Europe, but living in London. At the time, friends described her as vibrant, curious, and adventurous, a woman who carried a camera everywhere she went. Elena had been fascinated with Iceland for years. The photos of glaciers, volcanoes, and the endless black sand beaches had drawn her in like a magnet. She wasn't just another tourist. She wanted to experience the rawness of the land, the hidden trails, the remote villages where outsiders rarely went. Her family back home worried. Iceland wasn't unsafe, but it was unforgiving. Harsh weather could change in minutes, and tourists every year went missing in the highlands or along treacherous coastal paths. Still, Elena reassured her mother in one of her last text messages. "Don't worry, Iceland is beautiful and safe. I'll be fine." Those words would soon take on a chilling weight. Elena arrived in Reykjavik, Iceland's capital, in late September, a time when the daylight hours were shrinking fast, and storms came without warning. She checked into a small guest house near the old harbor. Staff recalled that she was polite, cheerful, and carried a weathered leather journal where she wrote constantly. From there, her trail can be pieced together almost hour by hour. Day 1. She explored Reykjavik, visiting a bar popular with backpackers. Witnesses remembered her speaking with 2 men, one American tourist, another local fisherman in his 50s. CCTV footage shows her leaving around midnight, alone, walking back toward her guest house. Day 2. She rented a small car, a silver Suzuki, and drove toward the Snæfellsnes Peninsula, an isolated windswept region where mountains drop straight into the sea. Locals at a gas station remembered her stopping to ask for directions. She bought bottled water, a sandwich, and a road map. Day 3. She was seen hiking near Kirkjufell, one of Iceland's most photographed mountains. A tourist couple snapped a picture that accidentally caught Elena in the background, hood up, staring out at the sea, and then she seemed to vanish. The timeline becomes fractured here, stitched together from fragments. A bartender in the fishing village of Grundarfjörður swore he saw Elena on the evening of her 3rd day. He remembers because she paid with cash unusual. In a country where nearly everyone uses cards. She asked about boat tours, specifically whether fishermen would take her out past the fjords. Another account came from a pair of German hikers. They claimed to have passed a woman matching Elena's description on a coastal path late that afternoon. She was alone, moving quickly, and didn't respond when they greeted her. CCTV fragments from a guest house show a figure resembling her, entering around 9:47 p.m. But strangely, the footage for the following morning is missing, corrupted. According to the owners, no one can say with certainty what happened after that. Elena's phone records show her making one final call to her best friend in London. It was short, just under 2 minutes. She said the storm was coming in fast, that the sea looked angry. And then, almost in a whisper, she said something that investigators would puzzle over for years. "I think someone is following me." The line went dead. No more texts. No more calls. When her family tried reaching her the next morning, the phone rang once, then switched off. It would never be powered on again. When Elena failed to check out of her guest house, The staff grew concerned. By the second day, police were notified. In Iceland, missing persons cases are taken seriously, especially involving tourists. Within 48 hours, search teams were combing the coastline, helicopters sweeping the cliffs, and divers scanning the freezing fjords. Her rental car was found abandoned near a trailhead. Inside were her camera, some clothes, and her travel journal. But her coat, the heavy wool coat she was last seen wearing, was gone. Theories emerged quickly. Accident. Perhaps she slipped on the cliffs and was dragged into the sea. Runaway. Maybe she wanted to vanish, to start a new life elsewhere. Foul play. That someone she met during her travels had followed her and silenced her. But none of these theories explained the inconsistencies. The corrupted CCTV, the cash payments, the missing coat. And so the case of Elena Morozova began one that would grip Iceland, and eventually the world. Because 3 years later, the sea would give a piece of her back. The storm had passed. But what it left behind wasn't calm. It was silence. The cliffs of Snæfellsnes stood jagged against the morning sky, their edges white with frost, as if sharpened by the wind itself. Waves rolled endlessly below, cold, violent, merciless. And somewhere out there, in this vast, unforgiving wilderness, a young woman was missing. This wasn't just another tourist lost on a hiking trail. The feeling among the locals was different. The police knew it, and soon. So would the entire country. Within hours of Elena's disappearance being reported, the Icelandic Coast Guard mobilized. Helicopters thundered over the coastline, their spotlights sweeping the fjords. Boats from nearby villages pushed into the freezing waters, nets dragging through the surf in case her body had been pulled under. Divers, clad in black neoprene suits, descended into the dark depths. The water was so cold, it could paralyze a person in less than 5 minutes. Every dive carried the risk of not coming back up. On land, dozens of volunteers, farmers, fishermen, hikers spread out along the trails. They walked single file, scanning every crevice, every shadow between the rocks. Dogs barked into the wind, noses pressed to the ground, searching for a scent. For days the search never stopped. Helicopters returned to refuel, only to lift off again. At night, flares lit the sky, burning red against the blackness, as if marking the place where the earth itself had swallowed someone whole. And yet, nothing. Not a body, not a footprint, not a single trace, at least, not at first. To understand this mystery, you have to understand Iceland itself. This is not a gentle landscape. It is a place built by fire and ice, where glaciers loom like frozen giants in black sand. Deserts stretch for miles without a single tree. The Snæfellsnes Peninsula, where Elena vanished, has been called Iceland in miniature. Here, you'll find volcanoes, lava fields, cliffs and glaciers, all packed into one region. But beauty comes with danger. Trails that look easy can disappear under snow overnight. A wrong step can send a hiker tumbling hundreds of feet into the sea. Locals often say, the land here doesn't forgive mistakes. It erases them. For Elena's family, who soon arrived from abroad, this was their first haunting realization. 3 days into the search, Elena's parents and younger brother flew in from London. The images of them stepping off the plane made headlines across Iceland. They looked lost, exhausted, clutching photographs of Elena with trembling hands. At the search headquarters, her mother begged reporters, "Please, if anyone saw her, if anyone knows anything, come forward. She is our only daughter." Her father was quieter, staring out at the fjords as if expecting her to walk back at any moment. But her brother, only 19, lashed out at police. "You're not telling us everything. Someone knows what happened to her. Someone must have followed her." His words, raw with anger, would echo later because the more investigators dug, the stranger the story became. On the 4th day, searchers found the first real clue. a shoe Elena's hiking boot, wedged between two rocks near the trailhead. It was damp, but not waterlogged, suggesting it hadn't been out in the open long. A scarf, bright red, was later discovered snagged on a branch near the cliffs. Fibers were collected, matched to the wool scarf seen in her photos. And then, the most chilling discovery, her phone. It was found in her rental car, tucked into the glove compartment. The device was completely intact, battery drained. Forensics showed that some files, photos, messages had been deleted shortly before. It powered off. Who had deleted them? Elena or someone else? The deeper police looked, the more the case slipped away like sand through fingers. The CCTV footage from her guesthouse had strange missing timestamps. Hours of footage had been wiped, as though corrupted, but only on the night Elena returned. Witnesses gave conflicting reports. The bartender swore she asked about boats, but the German hikers insisted she was rushing down a cliffside trail alone. Could she have been in two places at once? And most unsettling, the phone call to her friend in London. Elena said she was being followed. Investigators traced nearby cell towers, but no other calls or messages were made in that area at the same time. It was as though her last words came from a void, no digital footprint, no trace left behind. By the end of the first week, the story exploded. Iceland's newspapers ran front-page headlines. Tourist vanishes without a trace. International outlets picked it up too, casting Iceland in a new, uneasy light. This wasn't supposed to happen here. Iceland was marketed as one of the safest countries in the world, a place of peace and untouched nature. But now, people whispered of darker truths, unmarked graves along the cliffs, fishing boats that carried secrets, even legends of the sea itself claiming sacrifices. For Elena's family, the growing attention was both a blessing and a curse. More eyes meant more pressure, but it also meant more speculation. Some called her a reckless tourist. Others whispered that she wanted to disappear, but her mother refused. Through tears, she repeated again and again, "My daughter didn't run, someone took her." And as the second week began, investigators faced a terrifying question. Were they searching for a missing woman? Or the evidence of something far worse? The sea was calm again. But beneath its glassy surface, whispers began to rise. In the absence of answers, people create their own. And soon, Elena's disappearance was no longer just a mystery. It was a story, reshaped and retold in every cafe, every bar, and every anonymous corner of the internet. On Reddit, on obscure Facebook groups, even on Icelandic message boards. Theories multiplied like wildfire. Some believed Elena had been lured onto a boat, taken out into the frigid waters where the sea would silence everything. Others were convinced she'd stumbled across something she wasn't meant to see. And then there were the locals. In the fishing villages, where every face was familiar, rumors spread quietly, never shouted, but whispered at dinner tables, shared in half-finished sentences. They spoke of fishermen, men who went out at night, not always for fish. Fishing is lifeblood here. Entire families depend on it. But the sea is also a shield capable of hiding anything. Some pointed to a trawler that had returned. Unusually late the night Elena vanished. Its crew claimed engine trouble delayed them, but no one could verify their story. A deckhand who later spoke anonymously said he remembered seeing a girl's coat on board, one that didn't belong to any of the crew. The claim was dismissed by police as hearsay, but online sleuths clung to it like proof. Could Elena have been forced onto a boat? If so, why? Here, the theories grew darker. Iceland may seem isolated, but some investigators whispered of underground networks, human trafficking routes that used remote ports to move people quietly through the North Atlantic. It wasn't a theory pulled from thin air. A Europol report, leaked just years earlier, noted Iceland's strategic position, halfway between Europe and North America. A stopover few would suspect. To many, it explained the missing phone data, the erased CCTV. If powerful hands were involved, then traces could vanish just as easily as Elena had. But was Iceland truly part of such a network? Or was it simply paranoia feeding on silence? And then came the strangest theory of all. Iceland is a land steeped in myth stories of hidden people, spirits of glaciers, and restless souls of the sea. Some locals half-jokingly said Elena had been taken by the land itself, that she walked where she shouldn't have, into a place the old stories warned about, the tale of Draugr, a ghost said to lure travelers into the ocean, resurfaced in late-night conversations. It was easy to dismiss as superstition. But for others, it carried a chilling truth. Iceland's folklore has survived because sometimes people really do vanish without explanation, behind closed doors. Police were less interested in myths and more in people. They began pulling in anyone who had last seen Elena, the bartender who remembered her asking about boats, the German hikers who claimed she rushed past them, even the guesthouse manager, who had been strangely evasive when asked about the missing CCTV hours. Each interrogation revealed cracks. The bartender changed his story first, saying she asked about boats, then insisting she only asked about directions. The hikers contradicted each other, one swearing she wore a red scarf that night, the other claiming she wasn't wearing one at all. The manager insisted the CCTV system had malfunctioned, yet engineers found evidence of deliberate tampering. The deeper police pushed, the murkier it became. And then came the most unsettling discovery. Forensic teams confirmed that Elena's phone had been accessed after her disappearance. Certain files, photos, and voice notes had been deleted. Not by accident, but by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Logs showed the deletions occurred around 3:17 hours after her last known sighting. But Elena's phone was in her locked car. So who had access to her keys? And why delete her files instead of destroying the phone entirely? As weeks passed, the atmosphere in Sefelsens shifted. Women reported being followed at night, shadows trailing them as they walked from bars to guest houses. Some claimed they heard footsteps behind them, only to turn and find no one there. A student from Reykjavik reported that a man in a fishing cap followed her car for miles before vanishing into the fog. Another tourist insisted she woke to find her hotel door slightly open, though she'd locked it. Were these coincidences born of fear, or the sign of something lurking in the community, emboldened by the silence around Elena's disappearance? The whispers had become louder than the official reports. Every theory, every rumor, was a thread in a web that seemed to stretch wider every day. And yet, through it all, one haunting truth remained. The girl was still gone. But the darkest turn was still to come, because soon a body would be discovered. And with it, questions more terrifying than answers. The ocean has a way of keeping its secrets. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. For Elena's family, those years were nothing but silence. No new leads, no new sightings, no trace of the girl who had once walked Iceland's black sand beaches and disappeared into the mist. The world moved on. But they never did. By the second year, the case had gone cold. The police files, once thick with reports and interviews, now sat untouched in gray cabinets at the Reykjavik station. Investigators rotated out, some retired, some moved to other divisions. Each new detective promised to review everything from the beginning. But nothing ever came of it. The press, once hungry for updates, stopped asking. The story was no longer news. It was just another unsolved case, another face fading from the headlines. For the family, it was a different reality. Every year, Elena's parents flew to Iceland on the anniversary of her disappearance. They would stand on the black cliffs where the sea met the fog, holding candles that barely flickered in the wind. Sometimes a handful of locals joined them. Other times, it was just them alone, their grief swallowed by the endless ocean. Her mother once said in an interview The silence is worse than anything. If she had died, at least we would know. But not knowing, it's like drowning every day. They kept her room exactly as she left it. Clothes folded, books stacked, the faint smell of her perfume still clinging to the air. Time stopped for them the night she vanished, and Elena wasn't the only one. Over the years, whispers surfaced about others. Tourists who went hiking and never returned. A young man whose rental car was found abandoned near a glacier. A woman whose footprints ended at the edge of a fjord. Most were explained away as accidents, harsh weather, dangerous terrain. But to Elena's family, these stories only deepened the wound, because every disappearance reminded them that Iceland could swallow people whole, without leaving a trace. Her friends, interviewed in documentaries, painted a picture of the woman. Behind the headlines, she loved photography, her camera always hanging from her shoulder. She kept a small diary where she wrote about places she wanted to see: northern lights, ice caves, the place where the world feels endless. One entry, dated just days before she vanished, read, "I feel both safe and unsafe here. The land is beautiful, but something about the nights unsettles me." Those words would haunt her family forever. And then, 3 years later, silence finally broke. It was an ordinary morning for the crew of a small fishing trawler. They had set their nets deep into the frozen waters off Iceland's western coast, hauling in cod and haddock as they always did. But when they pulled the nets to the surface, something else was tangled in the icy ropes. At first, it looked like seaweed, frozen solid, then fabric. A coat, stiff with ice, its colors muted, but still visible. It was unmistakably feminine. The fishermen dragged it aboard, silent now, the wind howling across the deck. And inside its pockets were remnants that would reignite a case thought long forgotten. The ocean had spoken. And what it revealed was only the beginning of a darker truth. The discovery of the coat was like a whisper from the dead. A reminder that Elena's story wasn't finished, that the ocean had held its silence for 3 years, and was finally ready to give something back. But what secrets could one frozen coat possibly reveal? The answer would change everything. Coat was sent to Reykjavik's forensic lab, placed carefully in a temperature-controlled chamber as technicians worked around the clock. At first glance, it looked like any other weather-worn jacket: frayed edges, saltwater damage, and the unmistakable stench of the sea. But beneath the surface, under UV lights and chemical swabs, the truth began to emerge. Traces of blood were found in the lining. Not much, but enough. Fibers from another fabric were tangled deep inside the stitching, suggesting violent contact. And then, the most chilling discovery: a partial fingerprint pressed faintly into the inside pocket. Not Elena's, someone else's. Scientists then turned to ocean drift analysis. How long could a coat survive in those waters before surfacing? The answer stunned everyone. The current suggested the coat hadn't been adrift for 3 years. At most, 6 to 8 months, which meant one terrifying thing. The coat had been placed in the ocean long after Elena vanished. Someone, somewhere had kept it, and then decided to get rid of it. And as the story made headlines again, silence broke elsewhere too. Witnesses who had once kept quiet began to speak. A tourist from Germany came forward, saying he remembered a girl who looked like Elena leaving a bar with 2 men the night she disappeared. A local woman admitted she'd seen a young foreigner arguing near the docks but had never reported it, fearing retaliation. Their testimonies, buried in fear for years, suddenly gained new weight. Attention quickly shifted toward Iceland's fishing industry. It was no secret that certain docks were controlled by powerful figures, men whose reputations were built on silence and intimidation. Whispers began circulating. Had Elena stumbled into something she wasn't supposed to see? Was her disappearance tied not to the wilderness, but to men who made their living from the sea? One name surfaced repeatedly: A figure with influence, money, and connections. A man no one dared accuse publicly until now. For the first time in years, Icelandic authorities reopened the case. This time, with tools that hadn't existed when Alina first vanished. DNA sequencing was faster, more precise. Digital forensics allowed investigators to re-examine old CCTV frames, enhance blurred details, and recover fragments of deleted phone records. The case was no longer just about a missing tourist. It was about power, secrets, and the shadows cast by an entire industry. And, as investigators dug deeper, they realized something terrifying. Whoever had kept Alina's coat all those years might still be out there, watching, waiting. The ocean had given back a coat, but what about the girl who once wore it? The answer was about to drag the investigation into darker waters than anyone could have imagined. The ocean keeps its secrets. Well, but no secret can remain hidden forever. For years, Alina's disappearance was a mystery, a story swallowed by the sea. But in the end, the truth rose to the surface like a ghost. And it was far more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. Investigators pieced the puzzle together slowly, fibers, fingerprints, and ocean drift patterns forming a chilling mosaic. But the real breakthrough came from hidden files uncovered during a quiet raid on a shipping warehouse tied to the fishing industry. In a locked drawer, buried under forged documents, lay a set of photographs. Grainy, faded by time, but clear. Enough to reveal the unthinkable. Alina, frightened, disoriented, her coat still on her shoulders, surrounded by men who didn't want their faces shown. Alongside the photographs were logs, records of payments, movements of boats, and one chilling entry that read only, "The girl, taken care of." Forensic evidence confirmed what everyone feared. Alina hadn't fallen into the sea. She hadn't simply vanished into Iceland's wilderness. She had been taken, held against her will. And on that final night, when she tried to escape near the docks, she was silenced, her coat kept as a trophy, hidden for years, before being dumped into the water when whispers of a reopened case began spreading. The most haunting question remained: why had this case been buried? The answer was as dark as the sea itself. The men involved weren't strangers. They were connected to powerful names in Iceland's fishing trade. Names with the influence to pressure police, to erase files, to make witnesses afraid of speaking. Every delay in the investigation, every missing CCTV frame, every inconsistent report. It all made sense now. The silence hadn't been an accident. It had been bought. When Elena's parents learned the truth, grief turned to rage. For years they had lit candles in her memory, held vigils by the sea, begged for answers in a country that seemed determined to look away. Now they had answers. But closure was impossible. Because knowing what happened was not the same as bringing her home. Her mother's words to reporters, cut like a knife. They didn't just steal my daughter. They stole 3 years of lies, of silence, of pretending she never existed. We will never forgive. Today, the case of Alina is remembered not just as a disappearance, but as a warning that even in the most beautiful places on Earth, with glaciers shining like glass and oceans stretching endlessly into the horizon, darkness still waits, patient and cold. And if you ever stand on the frozen shores of Iceland, with the wind howling across the waves, you might imagine her coat drifting somewhere beneath the water. A reminder that the sea doesn't always return what it takes. And sometimes, what it gives back is even worse. If you want more chilling mysteries like this one, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon, so you never miss the stories that the world tries to forget. Because the ocean isn't the only thing that keeps secrets. And we will uncover the next one together.